So people assume we are just going back to the good old.
Whoops, sorry.
Which we had, and everything will be normal again in how we are used to normal, in the old fashion. This is fiction. It will not happen. The cut which we have now is much too strong in order not to leave traces.
So option number one is we become more egoistic. And I think his view on a international scale, that probably means we move more towards right-wing authoritarianism. Option number two is we go back to normal, the way it was before COVID. And he says, that's not going to happen. It's just not going to happen. Too much has happened. Too much is involved. We're not going back to normal. So what is option number three? All right, we're up to, Klaus is saying we can't go back to normal. Why? Well, because normal was, COVID has changed everything, he says. He doesn't say why. Now, I agree with him. We're not going to go back to normal. COVID has proved a lot of things. We'll talk about some of the things it's proved. Among them, there were sheep. Among them, that will tolerate authoritarianism in ways that nobody could have imagined. And he will say that COVID has proved that we can do public-private partnerships, that corporations and government can work together, all these things. So COVID has changed the mindset of the world and of Americans. COVID has changed the mindset of politicians in terms of what they think they can get away with. Thank you, Alex. COVID has changed the world in which we live. It is true. We are not going back to the way things were. And look, the way things were was not great. A mixed economy is never great. A mixed economy has to go somewhere. A mixed economy, for those of you new to the concept, is a mixture of some freedom and some control, some capitalism and some socialism. But a mixed economy never stays put. It either moves towards socialism or towards capitalism. The egoism he's expressing is move towards capitalism. He says that's not going to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I agree with him. The alternative is to stay where we are. That's not going to happen. Then are we moving towards more socialism? A type of socialism? Let's listen to where he wants us to move.
And then we have the third possibility, to construct a new concept based on the learnings, on the observations we have seen, and to create really a more resilient, a more inclusive, and a more sustainable world.
More resilient, more inclusive, and more sustainable. More resilient, more inclusive, more sustainable, right? We'll come back to some of these ideas. What does that mean? What does that mean to be more resilient, more sustainable, more inclusive? These are the terms you're going to hear a lot of in the next few years. These are the terms you're going to hear a lot of from the Biden administration. These are going to be the words you're going to hear from AOC and from the people on Biden's left who are going to be pushing and tugging and pulling him leftwards. And who are going to be putting him right, and right on what issues? That's going to be the challenge. But let's see what this breaks down to, what this actually involves.
Be achieved. Professor Schwab sets out 5 priorities that should be built into the Great Reset.
5 things, 5 priorities. The first one is we have to redefine our social contract.
We define the social contract. Now, for those of you who don't know what the social contract is, the social contract is this abstraction that comes from, I think it comes from Rousseau. I think it comes from Rousseau. And it's the idea that you and the state, when you're born into the state, you've got a contract. The contract is that the state provides you with X, Y, Z, and that you pay your taxes, you're loyal, you do the things expected of you. And in exchange, depending on the social contract, what you believe the social contract should include, it should include, the kind of free market social contract. I don't really believe in a social contract. You can't have a contract which you didn't sign. Is the idea that the government will protect you from force, will protect you from coercion, will protect you from authority, will protect you from your neighbor trying to steal your stuff. But the social contract has evolved from that idea, which I don't think was ever Rousseau's idea. That's kind of the free market interpretation of it. To this idea of, well, we need to guarantee your basic income, and we need to guarantee your job, and we need to guarantee your health care, and we need to guarantee all. But there's a contract. There's this relationship between the state and the individual. And we need, Klaus tells us, we already have a pretty broad social contract. We pretty have a lot of responsibilities from the state. And of course, what this demands is your obedience. You signed a contract. You have to abide by it. You have to pay your taxes, pay them on time, pay as much as they require, you know, and do the things that society, in quotes, expects you to do. Behave yourself. Don't step out of line. Don't be too radical. Don't say the wrong things. You know, you signed a contract. That's the whole idea of a social contract. So when a lot of times when I give a lecture or something, people say, but what about the social contract, right? You have accepted these terms. Why are you challenging them? And I'm going, I never accepted them. When did I accept them? Show me my signature. Show me my choice. I didn't choose to be born. I was born into this world. And I believe when you're born into this world, you're born free. You're born with rights. You're born with the freedoms to act in pursuit of your own life, your own happiness. I didn't sign a contract. There is no contract. So there's already, in a sense, an expansive view of the social contract. Klaus, our good friend Klaus, wants to reframe that. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Donna. Thank you, John. Thank you, Ed. Thank you, Alex. Really appreciate it. You know, even, you know, I know these are small contributions, but they mean a lot that you're supportive.
Integrate more inclusion. We also have to make sure that we integrate much more in a social contract our responsibility towards the next generation.
So more inclusive is the whole social justice. More inclusive is code word for, you know, the whole Black Lives Matter, systemic racism, all of that. We need to make sure that everybody is included. Everybody benefits. Everybody is supported. Everybody moves forward. It really is a concern with the big issue, which he doesn't name, but it's the big issue. One of the big, I'd say there are three big issues, three big agenda items that they have. I'll get to that later. But one of them is inequality. And inclusive means no inequality or less inequality. We need to get rid of the inequality that exists. Inequality is a huge problem. Being more inclusive means less inequality.
Cannot just think of the debt, leave all the solutions and to be paid for by the next generation.
He's actually talking about the debt here. And the debt is too high. And we're leaving the debt to future generations. I find this interesting because nowhere in their program, in the Great Reset, do I see anything about how you deal with that debt, how they propose to deal with that debt. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Skylar. That's great. Thank you, Adam. That's fantastic. And thank you, Lester. So they never mention how they're going to deal with the debt. The debt is just, we shouldn't burden future generations with it. How do you do that? Nobody ever says.
So the social contract, and in the social contract, we also have to look at one specific issue. So COVID will create again a gap between the so-called industrialized and emerging countries.
So it's not just inequality between people. It's inequality between countries. Inequality between countries, by the way, that has been closing rapidly as the developing world has become richer, has become less poor, has become more free. But that's not good enough for them. They are worried, and it's true actually, that COVID might increase that inequality. I actually don't think it will. I think poor countries have done better with COVID than rich countries, because rich countries can, quote, afford to shut down, whereas poor countries haven't. So economically, they've taken a lot less of a hit from COVID than rich countries. So I don't think the economic so-called inequality will expand under COVID. But he does, and he's worried, and he wants more shrinkage of inequality on a global scale. Now that's ambitious, guys. That's ambitious.
The emerging countries, at least some of them, suffering much more compared to some of the countries which have a well-established social safety net.
Is that really true?
Second, it's the decarbonization of the economy.
So being more inclusive means to, reduce inequality. Second, it's to decarbonize the economy. Now, I've often said the only way to decarbonize is to die. I mean, you emit carbon in every breath that you take. So the only time you stop emitting carbon is not just when you're dead, but when you're actually decomposed, because the decomposition process, I think, emits carbon as well. So, decarbonize the economy. Good luck with that.
Factors against an environmental virus. And here we will publish tomorrow, by the way, a report which shows clearly that there is no contradiction between taking care of nature and particularly creating the need to create jobs and to invigorate the economy.
So notice the massive Keynesian fallacy here, and it's not just Keynesian, it's this idea that what creates wealth, what creates jobs, what creates economic activity is money printing. It doesn't matter what the job is. It doesn't matter how productive it is. It doesn't matter what its real value is. But that the government could just engage in infrastructure projects, in this case infrastructure projects to decarbonize us, to benefit nature somehow, that is good economics. This is a huge issue. You're going to hear more and more about this. This is something that people like Paul Krugman are going to make a big deal out of it and going to use their Nobel Prize in economics to really highlight and to say, look, I'm a Nobel Prize winning economist. I know what this is, right? Yeah, David says, printing money is a debt placed on the unborn. Yet, well, it's a debt placed on all of us and the unborn. Don't forget, you're going to have to pay for it. Your children who are already born, your grandchildren who might be already born, and future generations who are unborn, right? It's a debt on people, multiple generations. And he has audacity to speak about caring about the next generation. Guy is walking around with billions and wants us to shoulder the burden of helping the emerging world. Why doesn't he? Well, let's say he does. Still doesn't give him an excuse to enslave us to pursue values he believes in. Travis, thank you. Really appreciate that. But absolutely, David, I mean, it's the fact that these people claim to care about future generations as they're destroying them. Now, he will argue that he wants to tax, and that's how he's going to reduce the debt. He wants to print money to spend on infrastructure, climate change, nature, and at the same time tax the wealthy. Now, if you know even a little bit of math, you know that that doesn't add up. But that doesn't stop them. Reality has never stopped these people. Never stopped these central planners, authoritarians, little dictators. I don't know if Klaus Schwab is little, but he's a little dictator anyway. It hasn't stopped them from wanting to control our lives and run our lives for us.